Hi there! Are you struggling with complex and confusing if formulas? Nested ifs and if functions with AND or OR logic can get complicated fast. But don't worry. In this video, I will break everything down step by step so that you can write powerful if formulas with confidence. Make sure you stick around until the end because I'll be sharing my best tips to avoid common mistakes and make your formulas even more efficient. Let's dive in. If you're completely new to the if function, I have covered the basics in my beginner's guide to if functions. In this video, I'll take it a step further with advanced if functions. Before we get into complex formulas, let's quickly review the basics. The if function follows the following structure. The logical test checks if a condition is true or false. If true, it returns the value put in the second parameter of your formula, and if false, it returns the last value. For example, let's check if a student passed or failed, given a passing grade of 60. We start with an equal to and the if function, and the logical test is going to be if their score is greater than or equal to 60, then we want to put in pass. Otherwise, we want to put in fail. Now, this is how to use a basic if function. Nested if combine two or more if functions together, with the next if function being the value if false parameter in the previous if function. Now, let's assign letter grades to the students based on their scores. We'll start with an if function, and the first criteria is if the student's score is greater than or equal to 90, then we want to assign the student an A grade. Now, for the value if false, we would nest another if condition that says if the grade is greater than or equal to, in this case, 80, then we want to assign a B grade. Now, again, rather than another value to return if this criteria is false, we would put in another condition to treat scores that do not fall within the above two criteria. And we can say if the score is greater than or equal to 70, then we want to assign a C grade. And we do this one more time for a D grade. Now, for any other scores that do not fall within these conditions, we want to assign an F grade. After entering these formulas, we have to close all of our parentheses to ensure that all of the formulas are written completely. When doing so, watch out for the colors. You'll see that the red will close this red function. So we need one more to close the first if function. And enter. Now we drag down and we've been able to assign grades to all of our students. As you can see, nested if works, but they can get really messy. A cleaner and easier way to achieve the same result is by using the ifs function. The ifs function takes in a logical test and a value if the logical test is true. So we'll begin entering our formula. Note that you can put in as many conditions as you have. Now, for the final condition, we can either test if the score is less than 60 and give it a grade, or we can say for all other conditions that do not fall within the above conditions, we can put a true, and we can say those conditions should have a grade of F. We can see that the ifs function works exactly the same as nested if. However, the ifs function is a lot cleaner and easier to use. Now, let's move to ifs with AND. This is useful when multiple conditions must all be met. Assuming we have a list of loan applicants, their income and credit score, and we want to approve an applicant if their income is above 50,000 and credit score is above 700. First, let's see how the AND function works. It takes in two or more logical tests and checks if all of the tests are true. So we'll test if the income is greater than 50,000 and if the credit score is greater than 700. The AND function returns true if all conditions checked are true and false if any of the condition checked is false. We're going to use this AND function in building our if function. Now for our if function, we're going to start with the if function, and for our logical test, we want to check if both conditions are true. So we're going to check if the income is greater than 50,000 and if the credit score is greater than 700. Now, the value, if true, that's the value we want to return if both conditions are true, is approved. Otherwise, we want to return denied. Now, we'll extend our formula, and we notice that only applicants meeting both criteria will be approved. Now, the if function works in the same way, except that it checks if only one condition is true. So if we check if the income is greater than 50,000 or if the credit score is greater than 700, we will notice that for any applicant who has either of one condition to be true, the if function will return true. So let's see this within our if function. Again, you separate the logical test with a comma. The value, if true, will be approved, otherwise denied. When we copy our formula down, we will observe that any applicant meeting either of the condition would be approved. Now, let's take it a step further and see a more complex example. Assuming an applicant will be approved if they meet any one of these conditions. Now, since they have to meet just one of these three conditions, we're going to use an OR function because only one of these needs to be true. So we'll start with OR. For the first condition, we're going to check if the income is above 50,000 and the credit score is above 700. Now, we want both conditions to be true for the first criteria to be achieved. So we'll use an AND function and check if the income is above 50,000, if the credit score is above 700. Now, the second criteria that could be met by an applicant to be true is if the income is above 60,000. And lastly, if the credit score is above 720. Now we see how a combination of if and AND functions can work. Now we can take this formula and put it within our if function. If this formula works out to be true, we want to return approved. Otherwise, we want to return denied. Note that you don't have to build your AND or OR function separately. If you feel comfortable building it within the if formula, go for it. One more pro tip I want to share is how you can debug a subset of your formula. For example, if I want to see what this AND logical function returns, I can select the function, press the F9 key, and I can see the answer to that piece of my formula. To revert back to the formula, press the escape key. Before we wrap up, here are some common mistakes people make when using complex if functions. 1. Using too many nested ifs. Instead, use ifs for a cleaner formula. A second mistake is not understanding the difference between AND or OR. AND requires all conditions to be true, while OR requires only one condition to be true. In some cases, you would have to combine both conditions. 3. Forgetting to use the brackets or to close the parenthesis of the and or function. They are separate functions, and after putting in all of your logical conditions, remember to close the parenthesis. If you ever get confused as to why your formula is not acting the way it should, you can debug a subset of a function using the F9 key and press escape to reset your function. And that's it. Now you know how to use advanced if formulas in Excel. Let me know in the comments which other Excel functions you want to learn. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more Excel tutorials. Keep mastering data, and I'll see you in the next lesson.